Broadway-Lyndale used to have the highest crime volume, shootings, stabbings, drug dealings every day. It was like a circus every single day there. And you go there today, and it's completely different.
It is night and day.
Completely different.
We don't hear bullets into the night.
I've seen a wealth of change.
Recently, I get shocked when I hear gunshots.
Sending out the message that stuff like that won't be tolerated.
Like I never thought that would ever happen.
The tone of optimism is great.
We don't hear the emergency vehicles going by relentlessly.
We have the opportunity and sort of obligation to make sure that victims are serviced, and we can be what we like to call is that we can be the best part of their worst day.
We used to actually have to train ourselves not to get accustomed to so many gunshots.
We're not just talking about it, we're walking it too, right?
At breakfast, at lunch, and at dinner.
Speaking with some residents and talked about how they support the police department and have told me that they feel like the community has changed.
We would say, let's stop, let's say a prayer, let's not get accustomed to this.
People want to come here now. People want to work here.
I believe that the city now is heading to a better policing.
People actually want to work here and they want to apply here.
The police have been more interactive with the community.
What's going on, man? Of course. How are you?
The chief.
Yes, sir. Do you have a phone you want?
Speaking to folks, having that face-to-face interaction.
Thank you. Hey, of course.
Be the cops that they want us to be.
If the police engages with the community, you will see the community loving back what it's ours.
Somebody has an idea of what they think a police officer should be, and we try and fit that mold as best as we can.
People don't understand how powerful that is, but it is very powerful. It is the trust.
This is not about checking boxes. It's about reform, true meaning, restoration, rebuilding trust.
I've seen a market difference in terms of the trust that the community has had in MPD.
Making sure that we're doing things that's really going to be impacted and long-lasting and affecting the community in a way that's beyond, so that we can be that example for other states.
We're getting officers who look like the community, and who are actually showing up as peace officers.
I wanted to be a part of the change.
Remarkably, things have transformed.
I wanted to be part of the rebuilding of the Minneapolis Police Department in the city of Minneapolis.
MPD right now, it's a community within a community.
The cops in this town are wonderful human beings that just do great every day.
You just get the feeling now that the citizens are again owning the community and the police are serving the community.
Wonderful moms and grandpas and nieces and uncles, and that's what's going on in Minneapolis.
It gives you a great deep sense of confidence about the future of our city.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Craig, thank you so much for putting together that video. I think it sets a perfect tone for going through some of the statistics, the numbers, and the strategies that we have employed. What I like most about that video is it's very, very clearly that the police are intertwined with the community, because that is what's behind these numbers. That's the story behind the success that the city has seen. And that's why I'm so thankful that we have so many of our community leaders and stakeholders that have been a part of this process with us. Not all, but many of the community members that are here and some of our residents as well. Several members of the Minneapolis Police Department command staff are here. Assistant Chief Gators, Deputy Chief Montgomery, Bureau Chief Ganesha Martin, Deputy Chief Mark Kluko. We are in today the new 1st Precinct that covers downtown Minneapolis, which is just a state-of-the-art, incredible building. It is commanded by Inspector Bill Peterson, who's sitting there in the back. And I just want to recognize him and thank him, as well as all the members of the city IT department, the Public Buildings Director that works so hard to make this great space for us a reality. Our police inspectors are also here. Inspector Charlie Adams from the 4th Precinct, Inspector Jim Novak from the 5th Precinct, Inspector Jose Gomez from the 3rd Precinct is here as well. And also to my right, the gentleman in uniform in the middle there is Lieutenant Kelly O'Rourke. He's the leader of our juvenile division, and he also leads our curfew task force, which is one of the great success stories that working in partnership of the community that we'll be highlighting today. So the agenda for this, we're going to, before we dive into the data, we'll just outline what we're going to go through here. It's the statistics section. Obviously, that's covering the crime trends, our response times, the data behind how crime has changed in the city. There's very remarkable decreases in serious street crime, not just 2025 compared to 2024, but putting things into perspective, how significant the decrease has been since the height of many of these crimes. And in some cases, it's significantly below what was normal here prior to the pandemic. In some categories, we're below 2019. And in one precinct of the city, in terms of gun violence, we're the lowest that it's ever been. So I think there's some remarkable trends here to go over. The overall data tells a very clear story that the city of Minneapolis is moving in the right direction. And I'm proud to report that our city is becoming safer every day. Clearly, we have challenges, very significant challenges. The department today remains staffed significantly lower than it had been historically. We're about 300 officers smaller than what had been normal here prior to the increase in crime. But despite that, we are making progress preventing crime and also advancing reforms that are required under a consent decree. And those trends that we're going to see are the direct result of the hard work from the men and women of the police department, as well as the community leaders and different community organizations that are here with us today. So this is covering violent crime, as you can see, murder and gunshot wound victims. Last year, there were 12 fewer murders in the city. That's 32 lives saved compared to the peak in 2021. In terms of gunshot wound victims, we're down 18% from last year. That's even with the mass shooting at Annunciation Catholic School, as well as a few other mass shootings. It's overall 68 fewer victims. But what's most significant is there were 347 fewer shootings last year compared to where we were in 2021 at the peak. In 2021, the city earned the dubious distinction of being the only major city that ended the year with more shooting victims in one year than we had sworn members on the police department. So it was a very difficult challenge to overcome. And the success that we're seeing in reducing the number of shooting victims, combined with the success in increasing staffing that you will see later, highlights the overall success in rebuilding the department to make the city safer. So there's been fewer gunshot wound victims in nearly every precinct. The only exception to this rule is the 5th precinct. If you exclude the Annunciation shooting, where there were 29 gunshot victims at that one incident, the 5th precinct would also had a decrease from the previous year. The 3rd precinct is down 33%, and the 4th precinct is down 42% in terms of shooting victims for the year. This is a remarkable story. For as long as the city of Minneapolis counted the number of shooting victims separately from the charge of assault, last year was the lowest number of shooting victims ever in North Minneapolis. That goes back to at least 2008 when the city started tracking shooting victims separately. And that's incredibly remarkable. That's what you've seen from the Samuels that were part of the video that have been living that, the residents in the area. And it's incredible when you consider that for the vast majority of the time that the city was collecting that data, North Minneapolis comprised the majority of all of the city's gun violence, and led the city, was the precinct that led the city. And for the first time last year, that's not true. The lowest number of shooting victims ever in North Minneapolis, and the 4th precinct for the first time was not leading the city in terms of shooting victims. So that's incredibly remarkable. What's also behind these shooting numbers, the city has a gunshot detection system that it's had for over 15 years now. Before 2020, it had never recorded automatic gunfire in the city. Literally never. August of 2020 was the first time ever. After that, there had been thousands and upon thousands of automatic rounds that had been recovered. But thanks to the partnerships that we have with the different law enforcement agencies, the partnerships with community organizations, that has also decreased significantly. It's about half now of what it had been. Next crime we'll talk about is robbery. Robbery is down 50% compared to the peak that we had in 2021. There were just a number of robbery sprees in 2021, 2022, which involved street robberies, carjackings, those kinds of things. Just compared to last year, there have been 518 fewer robbery victims in the city, which actually robbery overall last year was 19% below what it was in 2019. So that's a very, very significant difference. Another problem that the city dealt with in 2020 was a very dramatic increase in carjackings. Carjackings had been almost non-existent prior to 2020, and they were not tracked separately. Just like shootings were tracked separately since 2008, carjackings started to get tracked by the police department as a separate part of robbery in 2020. But we've had some pretty impressive gains in reducing that problem. It's now 73% fewer carjackings in 2025 than the peak in 2021, and 100 fewer victims of carjacking last year compared to the previous year. So some of the stuff that's behind all of this. I would say overall, one of the things that we've been trying to do the last few years in the police department is restore a sense of urgency to addressing all of these problems. To help build that culture shift, and we've employed a number of different tactics. It's the partnerships with other agencies, it's the dedicated work, it's the increased staffing. But some of the work we do in addressing these crime problems deals specifically with a small group of very at-risk young people that commit just a disproportionate amount of crime and violence in the city. And the reality is, they are just as much a threat to themselves as they are to people in the community. They're very highly at risk. So in September of 2024, we formed the Juvenile Curfew Task Force under Lieutenant Kelly, who partners with a number of different community organizations. Mohammed Abdul Ahad, sitting right next to him, from Touch Outreach, is one of those many organizations. And the results that they have had in this task force speak for themselves. There's been about a 2/3 decrease in the number of at-risk young people getting involved in crimes. And that's because of the work that they do. They proactively go out at night and on the weekend, and they engage and they visit families. They try to make referrals to these different community organizations that are there to try and help young people, as well as social services and things that are needed. One of the recent officers that visited, went to a house and the heat wasn't working and it was very cold. So the officers went to Home Depot and bought a couple of space heaters and were able to help connect them long-term for services that could help fix some of the needs that they have. One of the parents that we deal with is here today with us. Miss Brianna is sitting up there with Lieutenant O'Rourke and Mo. And I just want to thank you so much for being here, because we're talking about all these numbers, and we're talking about at-risk youth, and it's not just statistics. Like, there are real people behind this. And I think one of the things that some folks in the media here have asked me in the past is, well, what about the parents? And I know a lot of times we look for simple answers to these problems, but we don't understand just how complex and how challenging they are. So if folks are asking, where are the parents? Well, here's one parent that is here with us. And 2 of her children were very much at risk, and we have seen some great success since we have been working together. And you know, Ms. Brianna's contribution is powerful because that's where prevention starts, and that's where it matters the most. It's accountability at home. And the community resources, Mo and other groups that are out there, are able to help, because all these parents have to go to work, and they cannot constantly monitor their kids 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they worry about their kids, you know, getting caught up with the wrong crowd. And we've seen tragedies. You know, just the last murder that we had in the city was a juvenile that we knew. And it was someone that we had been engaging with. And as soon as I saw the name, I recognized the person from all of the contacts that our juvenile outreach officers had been to. So it is very, very serious. But I'm so thankful for Lieutenant O'Rourke, Mo, and parents like Miss Brianna here that are the reason why we are seeing a reduction in juveniles that are so at risk and involved in crime. The other part that I'm proud of is the good work that they have been doing together was recognized internationally at the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference. That's Lieutenant O'Rourke up there receiving the Community Policing Award for the results that we have gotten thanks to our juvenile investigators, parents like Miss Brianna and Mo from Touch Outreach. So thank you so much. Moving on from violent crime into property crime now, burglary is down 30% compared to 2019. So that's burglaries to dwellings, people's homes, businesses, that type of thing. It's down 10% from last year. That means 193 fewer burglaries were reported in the city compared to last year. And that means 1,554 fewer burglaries in the city when compared to the peak in 2020. Auto theft is down. Auto theft remains a challenge. It's driven, at least half of all of those auto thefts on there, at least half are Kias and Hyundais, which is a problem that exploded and was fueled by social media, as many people know, in 2020, 2022, and 2023. The manufacturer now is finally making changes that should take away the ability for those thefts to occur so easily, but it still remains a challenge. That's one crime that remains higher than it was in 2019, but we are making progress. 1,706 fewer cars stolen compared to 2024, and 2,872 fewer victims of auto theft compared to the peak that we had in 2023. So it's progress, and we're continuing to work on it. Another strategy that's behind both the auto theft problem, the robberies that we talked about earlier, and some of the stuff that is involving juveniles has been our crime protocol. That's something that a strategy that we implemented in response to a lot of the robbery sprees that we were seeing happening at the peak, and then expanded it to try and deal with some of these other problems, the auto theft issue, as well as the damage to property sprees that have been happening. And we have also found that has been successful in, if not eliminating the sprees, reducing the scope of the problem and the seriousness of it. It eliminated the issue that we were seeing with random street robberies happening over a year ago in sprees. That isn't happening. It's changed over the course of last year. The challenge that we had in 2025 was dealing with sprees of juveniles breaking windows to cars, which is a difficult and annoying problem that many, many residents had to deal with, and it's expensive. But it is not nearly as dangerous as the street robberies that were happening in random sprees. Next slide. Aggravated assaults are down 9%. That includes the shootings. Any assault that causes significant bodily injury or serious bodily injury, that's an aggravated assault. 146 fewer victims compared to last year. but that's still almost 300 more than 2019. Domestic violence aggravated assaults are up 8%. That has remained a challenge, particularly as the department has dealt with decreased staffing. We have issued a special order regarding response to domestic violence. We have retrained the entire department in some new domestic violence procedures, and we are starting to see some results from it even within the last month. We now issue bulletins to the various law enforcement agencies in the area within the first 72 hours of a domestic aggravated assault, and that has resulted in other law enforcement agencies being able to arrest domestic violence suspects for us. So that and the work that we were doing with a domestic violence work group and a pilot project in the 3rd and 4th precincts, we were hopeful that will continue to enable us to better address this problem, but it remains a concern. Damage to motor vehicles, that's up 7% from last year. That's what I mentioned before. That is driven almost entirely by groups of juveniles that were out and would damage several motor vehicles, dozens of motor vehicles at a time. It's a challenging problem to deal with while we were having it, because unlike a robbery, we often do not get a report that a window of a car is broken until hours later when the person finds it. And then when there's an entire group of cars that had their windows broken, it requires a very intense level of investigation to identify the specific juvenile that broke that specific window. And so we've used community service officers that have gone out, dozens of them have gone out to canvass, talk to residents, to help them file reports, but also to help identify juveniles that are involved. And while at the end of this, you essentially have a minor crime, a broken window, it's not necessarily going to result in a prosecution. We have been able, again, to employ the juvenile task force to engage with those juveniles that we know are involved and try and redirect them. And we have seen success from that to enable parents to work with us and work with some of the community groups to try and help keep those kids away from the individuals that are negatively influencing them and going down that path. So response times. This is something that I think every elected official in the city, council member, every inspector that goes out, that's a complaint that we hear. One we hear is we don't see the police enough, that they want increased patrols, they want increased police presence. Then the next most common complaint, I would say, is police response times. When someone calls 911, it is an emergency. It doesn't matter which of these different crimes it is. It's very serious for that person. And they need and expect the police to be able to get there promptly. Prior to June of 2020, when crime was much lower and we had 300 more police officers, a priority 1 call, which is the highest level of emergency, the police were able to respond to those calls on the average just under 7 minutes. Since June of 2020, the police department has never again been, on average, below 7 minutes for response times. At times, it had gotten close, the average had gotten close to almost 10 minutes. And so we've taken action and developed a protocol, a response plan to try and better respond more quickly. And I think the results from this speak for themselves. So you can see here, when we implemented the special order and added a series of additional protocols, we had kind of a dramatic decrease the end of the year, the 4th quarter of 2025. And we've come very close to getting underneath 7 minutes. That's while the city is still experiencing, as you've seen, a higher level of demand for service, and also having 300 fewer officers. So that's something that I'm proud of. I'm thankful for the hard work of the cops that are doing that. And I'm confident that with the increased staffing that we are seeing over the course of the next year, it's our goal to get back to where we were with response times and get underneath that 7-minute mark. So hiring updates. The police department year after year had consistently gotten smaller ever since 2019. Year after year there had been attrition. And for the first time in 2024, we ended the year just slightly above the number of officers than what we started. It was the first time there had been an increase. And now in 2025, we've gone that much further. While we've made significant progress, there's a lot of people that are training, that are in the pipeline. In the room with us and outside, you see the folks in the gray shirts. Those are our community service officers. The city has more community service officers today than they ever did before. But the community service officers are still going to college. So in many cases, they're 2 years away from being able to enter the police academy. And then they go to the police academy for 4 months, and then they can become police officers and come out on the street. So while it's great that we have them, it's still some time until they'll be able to actually get out on the street. So these are the numbers here showing the attrition, 2023, 24, and 25. The first column is the total number of people that we hired. The next column is the total number that's separated. That's the one in the middle. And then the light green, the yellow or light green, that's the net change between the two. So it's the total number of people that we hired. So in 2025, we hired 174 people for sworn officer positions. We lost 49 police officers during the course of the year, so that is a net change of 125 people. We finished the year 125 people more for sworn officer positions than what we lost in the course of normal attrition. So that's very positive. Thank you. Yes, thank you. That is very positive, because almost the entire time I had been the police chief here, and I would get the report every week, month after month after month, we kept getting smaller. And even in 2024, when it finally stabilized a little, the numbers just did not add up. You know, the charter minimum here is 731. The department typically had about 900 officers for many decades. At the rate we were going in 2024, even when there was a little bit of an increase, we could go for infinity and never reach 731, because we were just not hiring enough people, barely hiring enough to keep pace with attrition at that point, but not hiring enough to grow. So thankfully now it is dramatically different. That trend is continuing into the new year. We're graduating a class of 21 recruits are coming out of the academy. The next class will have at least 30, if not 40 recruits in it. And we have a very strong pipeline of young people that are community service officers and cadets that are going to be following right up behind them. So this is positive to rebuild the department, which will ultimately help us deliver better service to the community and help us work with the community to continue to prevent crime. And these are the numbers here with the two of the programs that feed into the police officer position. That top line is the CSO, the Community Service Officer Program. Those are the gray shirts that are here with us today. They get a salary, we pay for their college, and we pay them to go to college, and then at the end of college they get to join the police academy. So it is a great program, particularly for young people in the city. If you know young people that are out there, we are hiring. We still have plenty of vacancies. We'll give you a good paying job. We will pay for your college and pay you to go to college, and then you potentially get a chance to be a part of a career that can be life-changing for many young people in the city. So please spread the word that is out there. That bottom line, the lighter blue, is the number of cadets. The cadet program is very frequently a bit older than our community service officers. Those are people who have at least a bachelor's degree. In some cases they have master's degrees. And they're often deciding to make a career change. So we hire them as cadets, and they go to community college for a couple months to do their police program, and then they're able to join the academy much quicker. So the consent decree. We know that we have a state settlement agreement. We have the reforms under the consent decree. It's rolled in together. And it's a whole lot of work that has to be done. while we're doing everything else to address crime and restore relationships with the community. And I'm proud to report that the department has done a whole lot of work in 2025 to advance the reforms under the consent decree. And I just need to be clear, the consent decree is a legal document with lots of paragraphs and lots of requirements, but we are not approaching this from a position of simply checking off boxes, proving, okay, we did this and we're done, we did that, and proving it and getting out of it. We're doing a lot to try and transform the department, to advance the spirit of the consent decree, but really just to become a learning organization that is built on continuous improvement. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this department better, not just for the residents that we serve, but also for the men and women that serve here, and try and do the best we can to give them better facilities like the one that you're in, and better support for their health and wellness so that they can be well as they're dealing with the traumas that we're seeing every day. So the reform process, I think a lot of people expected in the past, once the consent decree or settlement agreement was signed, that overnight we'd flip a switch and everything would be implemented. And that's just not how it works. It is a very long process, but that's by design. It's intentional. We have to go through a very intentional process to develop new policies, get them approved, involve community input in that, develop training for those policies before we actually implement them, develop data systems that can track the officer's performance and implementation of those, and then continue to monitor where we are and actually implementing those changes that we want to see. In 2025, we received approval on 29 policies that are new for the police department, and that is after this very long and rigorous process, drafting the policies, going through, involving the state MDHR, the monitoring team, going out and presenting them to the community, posting them online, and going through hundreds, literally hundreds of pages of policies and feedback, and trying to ensure that we're incorporating community feedback so that the community's fingerprints are on all of these policies. And then coming up with very rigorous adult-based learning, scenario-based training to implement these policies, and ensuring that we have the data systems in place to continue to monitor that. The community can see all of our draft policies online, and they have the ability to submit feedback. And we try to, we do go through all of it and try to incorporate and respond to as much of it as we possibly can. Key trainings that happened in 2025. The entire police department went through 3 days and 24 hours of use of force training to instill the very best practices and cutting edge use of force policy for the department. The whole department went through crisis intervention training for 8 hours. Wellness and early intervention training for 8 hours that's ongoing right now for the whole department. We have had over 20,000 hours of state settlement agreement training sessions delivered in the police department in 2025. Over 20,000 hours of training. So there's a whole lot of work that's been going on to try and implement these things and make this reform real for the people in the community on the street. So reform by the numbers. I mentioned that 29 policies have been approved. There's one new policy resource hub. So that's the policy resource hub is how the police officers can access the policies on the street when they're writing the reports, when they're getting ready for court. Prior to having this document management system, all that we had was a 700-page PDF that the cops had to try and thumb through on their own. Now we have a modern document management system where we're able to implement the new policies to the officers. As soon as you can scroll over a word and it can give you a definition, it can highlight you and redirect you to other related policies. It is a much easier way for officers that are out on the street trying to figure out what the policy is on a certain issue to find it more rapidly, so that they can spend more time making the decisions that we need them to make in the street, and less time trying to go through a PDF and figure out what a reporting requirement is or a threshold for something else. I mentioned over 20,000 hours of training was delivered by the department for the state settlement agreement. We conducted over 24 focus groups, 10 community listening sessions, and received just countless pieces of feedback from the community. I think it's well over 100 pages typed of feedback from the community that's been incorporated into the new policies. And then we've done, lots and lots of other things. The National Night Out the department has had. We've Shop with a Cop events over the holidays. Our community service officers have been working with one of the churches in the city to help deliver food to people who are from the immigrant community that might be afraid to leave their homes right now. It's just a whole lot of work that has been happening to try and go beyond what is in this legal agreement and advance the culture that I know the community wants to see in their police department. Some of the other things I mentioned earlier going forward, the crime pattern response protocol. We've had a number of community engagement sessions, and we've developed some additional leadership training, some other sessions for command staff, and the women's leadership and the mentorship program. Reverend Bethel's here from the Unity and some other members of the Unity Community Mediation Team that serve as mentors for our new officers, our new recruits. They meet them while they're still in the academy. They're able to introduce them to people from around the city and stakeholders so that they can feel like they are a part of the community as they're starting to enter into our profession. Pathway to Peace event was something I think was one of the most, for me, was one of the most meaningful community events that we had over the course of 2025. So obviously in May marked the 5-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder and the events and destruction of the city that followed. And really just the challenge of trying to build relationships with community. And this year, just around the 5-year anniversary, community members, the Unity Community Mediation Team, some of our pastors invited us to go back to 38th in Chicago, where we held a circle, had prayer, and then marched, as you can see, we marched together to the park and had a community barbecue. And I know that meant a lot to a lot of the residents in the neighborhood who still talk about it. And I just want to thank you, Reverend Bethel, for your leadership and the other pastors who put that together. Because I know, at least for many of the police officers that have remained here since 2020, they didn't think anything like that would have been possible in their career. So thank you for helping us all trying to heal together. So looking ahead, we're going to try and continue this momentum. We want to continue to try and reduce serious crime while earning community trust. We're not out trying to do whatever to reduce crime. We're trying to be as precise as possible, to target the juveniles that are at risk, to target the small group of offenders that are causing the most harm, the adults that are pulling triggers and causing the most harm in the community. But do it in ways that are not broad, that work to earn community trust. And we want to try and continue to heal our police officers and rebuild the police department. That being said, ask the mayor if you want to come up and join us for your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
I use that, or? Chief, thank you for your leadership. Thank you to all of our officers, the entire command staff, the community members that have been there through some of the most difficult of circumstances, both supporting and holding our officers accountable to make sure that we are collectively our best versions of self. The building that we're in right now is an example of investments that we need to be making to ensure that the work that the police officers are doing go hand in hand with community. It may not be seen that way in the immediacy, but here's the thing. You can't expect somebody to perform at their very best level if you don't invest in them. If you don't value their work and who they are both as individuals and as professionals, you can't expect them to take the next step in their careers and the next step for a department that has needed change. That change is afoot. That change is happening. The progress that we are making is very real, and you see it in the numbers. As the chief mentioned, and he is dead on accurate. Does that mean that we're sitting on our hands, we're done, and we're just going to move forward? Absolutely not. We all know that we have a hell of a lot of work to do to drive down crime, to make sure that every single person, every single neighborhood both has the reality and the perception of safety. We need to do the necessary work right now to make sure that the changes that are made are felt at the ground level, and here's what I mean by that. The chief talked about the reforms, the consent decree that's in place. There have been debates for decades around what reform is and what it looks like. What's the policy that is equivalent to seeing change in a department? What's the reform that needs to happen in order to say, okay, this city is good in terms of change and this city is bad? Well, the truth is, it's not just about the policy at all. First, it's the policy that needs to be changed, and we're making those changes. Second, it's making sure that officers understand what that policy is, and we're making sure that they do. Third, it's making sure that they are trained in on the policies that we just passed so that when something difficult arises, and by the way, it will, it's like muscle memory. Next, officers need to be held accountable when they don't meet the change and the policies that we are insisting upon, and we need to hold them up when they do. Both of those things need to be true. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, people, regular people on the street need to feel the change that is taking place. Again, we are not there yet, but based on the conversations that I have heard, that I know the chief has heard, from some somewhat even surprising people that have oftentimes been very critical of our police department, they're feeling the difference. They're seeing the change firsthand. Whether it's the differential in treatment between a federal agent and the way that a Minneapolis police officer will treat you, or it's the interaction that they have outside and beyond the commission of a crime. We want every interaction to be built on dignity and trust and respect, and more that is happening. And I want to thank our police officers for the very hard work that they are doing to get to that all-important end. And the most important work that I do as mayor, that Chief Hara does as chief, that you all do and want to see in community is safety. That is the most important thing that we need to work on right now. And you can see the numbers are trending in the right direction, which by and large means down. Assaults are down, carjackings are down, car thefts are down, homicides are down, shootings are down. In virtually every neighborhood, not all, but in virtually every neighborhood throughout the city, those numbers are trending in the right direction. And this is not just about getting to where we were in 2019. This is about blowing by those figures so that we have a level of safety that other cities are trying to replicate and achieve. That means that we can't be expecting our police officers to do a whole lot more with a whole lot less. I'm glad to see that response times are trending down from 8+ minutes to 7 minutes and 25 seconds. That's real progress. I'm excited that we are going to be getting below 7 minutes. But we all know at the same time, when you are in real danger, 5 minutes feels like an eternity. And so we got to be doing this work together. We've seen the seeds of success grow into something real. We've seen some of that work happen on both the north side and the south side. I do want to point out the numbers that we've seen on the north side, because they're historic. I want to point out those numbers because it resulted out of partnership. It resulted out of partnership with our Minneapolis police officers embedded in U.S. Attorney's Office. It came to fruition because, violent criminals, repeat violent criminals, were arrested, they were charged, they were put in jail, and we made a very clear statement that you can expect that to happen if you yourself are considering being a violent criminal. And so it's both the deterrent as well as the prevention. And we also know that the prevention work isn't limited to taking somebody off the street and putting them in jail. It's also making sure that people have good things to do in community. They have a route in life, that they have parks to play in and safe places where they can recreate. And it also means that one of the professions that you yourself have the opportunity to enter as a resident of Minneapolis is becoming a police officer. And you see these CSOs that are coming on right now. You look at the pipeline, and we're up, net 125, Chief, in this last year. That is nothing to scoff at, because there were some dark days back in 21, in 22, 23 probably as well, where one of my biggest concerns on a daily basis was reaching that point of no return. I didn't say it out loud at the time, because I didn't want to breathe it into existence, but that was one of the things that kept me up at night, is will we reach a point where we simply can't respond to 911 calls in anything remotely close to an adequate time frame? I won't say proud, I'm just relieved. I'm relieved to say we are not going down that point of no return. Our police department is growing every single day. We have the most diverse police department ever in our city's history. And more the officers that are here, that have stayed and that are coming on board, they want to be the change for others to follow. So I wanted to come here just briefly to say thank you, thank you, thank you. You've done good work. Do not rest on your laurels, because we have a hell of a lot of work left to do. Crime is not where it should be. We need to be doing the work to drive it down further, but I know that we've got a great team at our disposal to be working directly with. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say that of all the changes that I have to process as a member of this great department, I am super happy that one of the changes I don't have to process is adjusting to a new mayor. We're going to take some questions now. I think I can go back there with the mic. We'll try it. If it smudges, we'll turn it off and we'll just have you shout. But I'd like to know, I'm going to have my good partner, who always rises to the occasion, Officer Folk. He's got a microphone too. Community members, if you have a question, just come and raise your hand high if you'd like to ask a question to the Chief today related to what you've seen today.
Thank you so much, Chief. We really appreciate it. This is an amazing presentation. By the way, my name is Yusuf Abdullah. I'm the Imam of, I can't say many Imams. I'm the leader of Islamic Association of North America. Here in the state of Minnesota, we have 17 centers in this state, and we have major mosques in this area of Minneapolis. So I have worked with the Chief for a long time, since he was here, and we have accomplished a lot together in community policing and working together. So my question is, and I'll make it very brief. As you know, the environment nowadays is not good. There are federal troops in the state, of 2,000 people, as they're saying. Also, on January 17, which is coming very soon, there is a group of agitators coming from out of the state, Michigan and somewhere else. And they are going to burn the Quran, agitate the Muslim community in Minneapolis. So what will be the response of the police department, and what are the policies? What can we do and to reduce that tension. And we don't want that some young men of Muslims, get angry and get agitated as well and respond negatively to that. And we don't want that, an issue in our city and in our state. So thank you so much, the mayor. I really appreciate to see you today. And maybe that question is something you can also add to that. So we have that worry, and we're having meetings about that, how to respond to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Imam. First off, thank you for your partnership and all the other imams, the community members that we have been working together. I think every day for the last several weeks has been a challenge, and we continue to work through that together. I am worried about potential for problems any given day, let alone people looking to come here from the outside for the purpose of inciting things. So I look to have conversations with the community beforehand. Know that the police department, though, will be prepared. We will be prepared that day as we are focused every day, which is to protect the lives of people, people's property in the city, but also we have to protect people's constitutional rights. So that being said, what I would ask anyone in the community, whatever issue it is that they are upset about, that they want to go out publicly and protest and do different things, I would ask everyone to do so peacefully, because that is my greatest concern. But to the extent that there will be folks from the outside that come in that have views that are offensive to many people, that may be designed to cause a reaction, we have to understand that the role of the police does include allowing people to say things that are offensive, as long as it is not illegal, as long as it is not inciting violence or against the law, which I know can be difficult at times for people to understand. But that is the role of police in a democracy in the United States. That being said, we will have conversations beforehand, but we're asking everyone to remain peaceful in spite of provocation.
Thank you, Chief. On behalf of the Minneapolis Neighborhood Safety Clubs, we would just like to say how much we appreciate the warm welcome that you and all of the officers have given us in supporting our mission to bring neighbors, business, and law enforcement closer together in a spirit of friendship. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eileen. Thank you so much. Ms. Eileen Johnson is here. If you haven't noticed, there is an army of residents in orange shirts that go out and walk the neighborhoods, the different safety clubs in different neighborhoods around the city that are represented. And just thank you so much for partnering with all of the officers. Thank you.
Good day, Chief of the community. It's Ian Bethel, the chair of the Unity Community Meetings team, and also with the memorandum of understanding. The key to that is the Police Community Relations Council that we meet quarterly now. We co-chair that together. Thank you for this report. And it's important for us to get this report to the real community, the folk who are not here. And that's been our difficulty. Because they can chase fire engines, they can march, and yes, we must march, we must protest. But it's so important for us to be at the table. And I would say that this has not been easy. This has been difficult work. And let's be real. Sometimes, Chief, we pissed off at you. Sometimes you pissed off at us. Come on, y'all. I'm telling you, this has not been easy work, and especially when most of the folk in the community not getting paid. But giving up their times, their lives, and everything to this. But you know why we do it? Because we love Minneapolis. We believe in Minneapolis. And we resolve that we don't need anyone to come into this city to tell us how we can transform the relationships between the Minneapolis Police Department and the community. We don't do that. Thank God for a consent decree, but thank you, Mayor, for your stance on that. This is not our, no, we don't need that to make us do what we have to do. I think that the achievements that we've seen down through the years, and we've been doing this now over 20 years plus, but we remain at the table because we believe that not only should we keep law enforcement accountable, but we have to keep the community accountable. And we cannot do that unless we're at the table, whether we agree or disagree. And so I thank God for this moment that we're at, Minneapolis. And we have to now take responsibility to get this word out to the community because of the work that we all have done together. Thank you so much.
My name is Daniel Hernandez. I'm the owner of several businesses here in Minneapolis. First of all, I want to congratulate my friend, Jacob. Thank you. I'm very happy that you are the mayor. I'm very happy with Chief Hara. The work that you have done is amazing, outstanding. A few years ago, I got so many complaints, as many people, about the police. All the complaints were not good. I decided by myself that I needed to do something. And there is so many community representatives here, which I'm very proud because there is different colors. But if you want to make a change in a police department and you are a part of the community, you need to get involved. So I'm very impressed and happy to see many of you, many familiar faces that are involved in this. So I decided to make the change and become more close to the police. It took me a while. The first man that answered my call was Jose. He literally met with me this day I called him, he met with me. And we've been making so much improvement in the Latino community that right now I can tell you this, the Latino community trusts more our MPD than our federal government, and especially for what's happening right now. So I'm very happy to see a chief that supports minorities in general, and a mayor that is willing to give everything for his city, our city. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I don't have questions, I just have praises for you guys. Thank you.
Hi, Chief Sandra Samuels with the Northside Achievement Zone and a Northsider. My husband is up there. I think we were in a video earlier. I missed it. So I'm not going to repeat myself. But I want to start off by thanking our mayor, whose phone I burn up, and we're still friends. And so thank you so much, Mayor, for your leadership. It has been incredible, and I'm so relieved you got elected again. And then for having the foresight to bring in my brother here from Newark, New Jersey, where I'm originally from. And so, Chief, you've been incredible, and I just want to thank you for your responsibility. And I would really like to give another shout out. Living on the North Side for the last 30 years or whatever, never has there been a time, I think I said it there, that I haven't heard gunshots on the regular. It's been shocking, the silence. And so incredible. And I just have to give a big shout out to my inspector in the 4th Precinct, Charlie Adams. But I want to make sure everybody knows what's happening on a precinct level as well, just in terms of, one of the reasons I know in terms of domestic assault in our neighborhood, Charlie, Inspector Adams and his team, they are at a lot of our apartments where a lot of the domestic assault is happening, and totally responsive, and even has an employee that will go to the buildings and set up office hours around domestic assault. And then just being able, the encampments, we do not have encampments over north. And part of the reason is because as soon as we call Inspector Adams and his team, they are out, and out in such a respectful way to those who don't have homes, and like tells them, you know, you got this amount of time to move it on. And then working with our boys over north, like I can keep going, but the main thing is that what I see and what we live with is that on the ground, we have a responsive inspector, department, crime specialist, and Bill Magnuson, and it takes all of us to get this done. And so thank you, Inspector, and you, Chief, and you, Mayor.
I just want to piggyback at Sandra saying that you just got a hate going behind her, first of all. But Chief, through your leadership, we want to give a especially big kudos to Charlie Adams. Worked with him in the 4th Precinct with the Black Men Police Project. It was great. He went to the Legacy Museum with some community members. They got involved. You do see a significant change in the north side. I live in the heart of it. Sandra lives in the heart of it. We call each other. But we haven't seen it like this in many, many years. And that's through significant leadership from you, Chief, Charlie, Mayor, thank you. Billy Jack, all of you guys. I've worked with you for many, many years, but Chief, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anita Rena Davis. I'm a Northside resident for 71 years. I was even born in one of the hospitals in North Minneapolis that is no longer there. I was president the last, cadets? Last 2 weeks? And I have to say, in my entire life, I do not remember the police force looking like me more than they looked like my neighbors. Meaning that there were more faces of color than I had ever seen in my 71 years in North Minneapolis. And that makes a difference to not just me as a resident, but all the young people out in Minneapolis area neighborhoods who look at a police officer who looks like them and says to themselves, I can do that. I can be that person. What I wanted to say is everybody's doing good work, but what we didn't talk about is, as I'm getting older, I recognize my own vulnerability. Walking the streets and my own safety, my husband's safety, walking in the park. We live by Camden Weber, and he goes for a walk every day. And when he doesn't come back in a certain amount of time, I worry. Did he get assaulted? I tell him, don't take your wallet, just take your ID. Make sure you got your key, make sure you got this. We have to load ourselves up with protection. And that's something that we haven't really addressed. It's just that everyday safety, especially for vulnerable adults and young people. We have to start looking at how can we make those changes. Speeding is an issue. Running red lights and stop signs. But at the point I am now, I don't dare say anything. When I was younger, I had a mouth. Because I am north side. And I would say something. But now, like I said, I recognize my own vulnerability, and I'm concerned about the aggression that would come to me if I did say something. So what do I do about things like that? Do I just keep going about my business and acting like it doesn't happen? Or do we start looking at communities making those kinds of changes? The speeding is ridiculous. We watch people slam the brakes and somebody rear ends them. And I think that's a purposeful thing, but we've also seen accidents. Our neighbors and I stand in the street and talk and then, talk amongst each other. We know all our neighbors. It's something we have in common in the summertime. We watch the cars speed by, and we see them hit somebody and then take off. It's becoming an issue, speeding. And those are things that as we're looking forward into the future, thinking about how do we work together as a community to control that speeding? How do we work together as a community to make sure that those of us who are vulnerable, young and old, can be assured that we can still go to the park and be safe, that our kids can go to the park and be safe. That's all I wanted to say today.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon.
My name is Mohammed Abdullah Hara. I'm the Executive Director for Touch Outreach. And I just wanted to thank the Chief this morning for just acknowledging the work that we're doing, boots on the ground with our young people and behind the scenes, that we're actually contributing to that decreasing gunshot violence and murders that's happening in our community. I just really wanted to acknowledge that and uplift that, because not a lot of times that we get that acknowledgement of the work that's being done on the ground. So I really appreciate you highlighting that here today. And just imagine if we had the resources that we needed, we'd see those numbers dropping drastically more than what they are. So I just wanted to just say, I thank you and I appreciate this to the partnership that we're seeing those numbers decreasing, and the relationship that we have with community and law enforcement that it contributed to the success that we have right now with violent crime going down. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you for that. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Reverend Pierce from Second Chance Outreach. First of all, I want to thank Officer Hamid, he just walked out, and also to follow on Pastor Belto's statement. Officer Hamid, he was at one of our community events, and all the officers were there as well, some of the cadets. And also just recently in November, they were there for our Thanksgiving giveaway. So with that being said, how do we grow that? How do we expound on that community engagement and officers showing up that we can also dismiss this notion of safety and continue to build on a relationship with the community and also with the officer? With that being said, then also we build on the success that you have demonstrated today to let people know, get this information out to the community. So the question, how do we do that going forward?
Yeah. Thank you, Pastor. I think we are doing a lot, like you mentioned, a lot of these engagements. To the extent that you can, or the different organizations can, the different churches can, continue to invite us so that we can come out. And that when our cadets or our community service officers can come out, we can grab some of the officers that work in that neighborhood to come as well, to try and establish and continue those relationships. A lot of the young people that are here, especially the young people from the city, a number of them that became CSOs, a number of them did begin in some way like that. A lot of the young people that we have that ultimately decided to become community service officers that are from the community that are on that path, they didn't know anyone in the police department prior to them coming here. It's because they were able to make an introduction somewhere. And then they said yes when we invited them to come in and go on a tour of the facility to learn more about the training, go on a ride along with a police officer so that they could understand a little bit more and see the opportunity that's there. A number of them were interns for us before they became police officers. There's younger interns in the peace program, even that are much younger, that aren't old enough to be community service officers, that are going through that program and are the pathway to then go to college. So we need the community's help to continue that sustained engagement and to try and spread the word of the opportunities that are here. And then when we continue to have these ongoing community MSTEP meetings, I know the Inspector Peterson is the next public one that's scheduled, I think next week or the following week, January 15th, as we continue to have those types of meetings for residents in each of the neighborhoods to come out and help us spread the word about the things that are happening and the data, so that the community can help us tell the story of what is actually happening here. Because we know there's so many people on the outside that want to tell a negative story, not just about Minneapolis, but about every person in Minneapolis as well. So we need the community's help in trying to correct those negative narratives. So thank you, Pastor. In the front here? Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, Julie Wickland, community member, Minneapolis resident, and one of those crime victims from that highest point back there. And I look around this room and see so many friends and so many people that I've met along the way, and just want to thank Chief, thank Mayor Fry, and for where we've gotten to today. But we obviously know there's still challenges out there. I received a call last night from a neighbor that was carjacked at gunpoint, and we know that's still happening. So it'd be great to hear what you think the challenges are ahead and how we as community members and our electeds can support you better in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you.
From the police side of things, from the law enforcement side, we need to continue to be able to rebuild the department, which is expensive, as well as to continue to be able to provide the services on the street that are also expensive. We rely very much on overtime to have police officers that are present, to be able to urgently address investigations, to deploy officers proactively, so that we can try and prevent something from happening when there is potential for a civil disruption because of an event that's happening, or any of those types of things. The reality is the policing the city, as well as being committed to implementing reform, are both very expensive. Then you add on to that the expense of hiring so many people and paying them to go to college, pay for their college, is great, but it's also very expensive. And we know there's inflation year after year. The same number of overtime hours in 2025 is going to cost us that much more in 2026. It's just, that's the reality, how life works. So I would say continued support for the resources to do these things, as well as the support we need from community to work together where we can. Even just for residents to maintain that sense of urgency that we have now, that so many people here have communicated, to call us. We need all of our residents, regardless of their ethnicity or skin color or what have you, to be able to trust that they can call the police, to be able to trust that they can tell the police what's going on in their neighborhood without feeling like something bad might happen to them because of that. That's what we need. We need to be able to keep that going, to continue to try and do something proactively and prevent things from happening. We need parents that we're able to engage with, that will call our investigators and let us know, hey, my kid is with this wrong group again. Can you send somebody over? And those types of things, that all these individual things that are contributing to the results that we see. So we absolutely need the community's support in all of those different ways to do that. Thank you, Julie.
I'm Don Samuels, and former member of the City Council and chair of the Public Safety Committee. So this is all very close to my heart, especially as a resident of North Minneapolis, where we've deliberately lived in order to help to work with the community to make a change. Because we believe that America can get a lot better. And it's so pleasing to see that being demonstrated today, that things can be very bad, but they can also be very good. It all depends on how we react to crises and how we use the opportunities of failures to improve our processes and to get better. So I want to congratulate you, Chief, and the Mayor, and our, of course, our inspector, which you've heard that many times, and the church folks and the young people who have worked with you, and citizens all over who have stepped up at this time. And Chief, I want to encourage you to, there's a number here that has not been established. I don't know how you do it. Effectiveness per officer, in terms of, there were 900 officers on the street when I moved into North Minneapolis. There were 38 bullets in the garage behind my house. And we heard gunshots every night, and there were homicides, people on the sidewalk within a couple of blocks of my house, almost on a weekly basis. So that's the reality of what the city was, with 900 police officers. And now we're 300 short of the mandated amount. And we see these improvements. So clearly, something is happening here with the energy that has been put behind this because of the crisis, the energy that has swelled up from the community and from the department and from the leadership to make things better. And I just want to Can we just blow the ceiling off these low expectations for an American city and say that we're going to not just take this back to like stasis or the acceptable level of a safe American city, but we're going to transform policing and community safety in a way that will set an example and paradigm for America for the future. And I just want to ask you to stay with us for a while.
And we had issues with the police a long time ago. And I engaged Chief Olson. Does anyone remember him? Chief Olson. And Arnaldo was the aide to Chief Olson. And we had issues. So Arnaldo takes me out to a coffee shop and says, NPD is not like AT&T. When you get pissed off with AT&T, you go to Sprint. You're stuck with MPD. Bring Somali officers and be proactive. And from that day on, we've worked together. I worked with all these chiefs. I want to talk about Chief O'Hara. Chief O'Hara came in a very troubling time where even as a resident we were confused about police and safety, and we didn't know exactly what we wanted, a lot of us, and there were a lot of fear and violence. And in my neighborhood, we hardly slept without having this music of sirens going on until morning, because we are surrounded by highways. Those don't exist anymore. The biggest issue was outreach. Every other Friday we see Somali-speaking officers that come to our mosques, to our community centers. Where's Mukhtar? Officer Mukhtar and his team, and your team. All these officers, female and male, come to our communities, build that trust that we have never seen. Right now, 68% of young people in our community want to be police officers. Usually for Somali Americans, it's doctors. So that has changed because of the work, intensive work that we have done. People are more confident now than ever before to have a conversation with an officer. The biggest complaint we have in that community, not only Cedar Riverside, but in the Somali East African neighborhoods like our biggest mall, is the lack of officers. We need more officers. And I'm saying that I'm also working with our leaders, Anila and Pastor Bethel, with the United Communities Mediation Team. I'm part of that. We know the work, we are doing the monitoring. We are also training the police officers. It's a new generation. I think it's a new dawn in Minneapolis. We can be an example for the whole country. Let's continue to make sure Chief O'Hara doesn't leave the city of Minneapolis. Thank you.
I'm going to interject here that we're now half an hour past our presentation. And what that tells me, though, is that Chief O'Hara came to give an update on how the city is going, and he's highlighted the community engagement that we have and how that has been a collaborative effort on making things better. And it's obvious you've also shown up to speak to those issues. So thank you very, very much. But I'm suddenly very hot. Is that common? I'm starting to get flush and hungry. So I think we have one more person who'd like to speak with Mike, and then we'll go ahead and open up to our press partners for any questions they have. And thank you.
My name is Mary Woodard, and I'm the Executive Director of the Minneapolis American Indian Center. I'm a member of the White Earth Band of Ojibwe. So I want to thank Chief O'Hara for all the work that you've done with the community. So I have a relative who is a Minneapolis police officer, and he is in the 3rd precinct. And I will say that a few years ago, when the 3rd precinct was burning, he was outside of that building. And just the feeling that that my family had at that time, was, and we were scared. We didn't know what was going to happen. And he was in his uniform. He is a police officer today with Minneapolis. He works in the 3rd precinct. And I just want to thank you for keeping the officers safety also a priority. For me and my family, that is extremely important. And then, so that's on the personal side. And then from the community, I have to thank Inspector Gomez with the 3rd Precinct. So the inspector has a key to our building that he was given.
That's where he's always hiding.
Hiding his fob. Hiding his fob. Yeah, so that, and the reason really is to continue creating that, the trust in the community between MPD, you know, and our urban American Indian community. And so I really want to thank Inspector Gomez. He comes in, he has an office there, but has to add to the money tree still. So that's an ongoing joke with us. But you know, it really has helped to strengthen the relationships. And then also with Minneapolis Police Department's involvement with the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors. So I know that Inspector Gomez and a team of MPD officers are there monthly for the Public Safety Committee meetings with the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors. And then he's also attending a lot of other meetings too. But really being in community. So I want to thank the inspector and thank you, Chief, for all the work that you've done with our community.
Thank you, Mel.
We have a mother who loves her children. She wants to have something to say.
Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I'm one of the parents that have 2 juveniles that were at high risk. And I just want to thank you, Chief, and thank you to Lieutenant Kelly and Mo here that, you know, if it wasn't for you to create this juvenile task force, it didn't give me a sense of hope, but now I have that. And to know that I can actually call and lean on a team like you have created here gives me more of like an empowerment that I can teach my children that, you know, it's all cops aren't bad. They actually care, they're very passionate in what they do. It's challenging, but it takes a village. It definitely takes a village, and I just want to say thank you, thank you,
Thank you, Mom. Thank you.
There, Liz Sawyer from the Star Trib. Since it's been brought up multiple times, Chief, you were technically this month at the end of your first term. Have you asked the mayor and the commissioner to keep you on for a second term? And do you believe that you have the support of the new city council?
So the only correction I have is my term ended last month, and I'm still here. Yes, you know, this is a difficult job, as is a much more difficult job to be the police officers that are in the cars here every single day. The police department remains very challenged day after day. We're not quite in the level of crisis in terms of staffing as what had been normal. We're not in the level of crisis around crime as what we talked about today. But the urgency remains there. And I think, you know, a lot of times people mention the scrutiny that the department is under. Certainly it's the most intense scrutiny, I would argue, of any police officer in America. That's what our cops go through here. But what we're talking about today, with the progress that's been made, that has been made very clearly in partnership with the community. So as difficult as it is, to me, this is the most rewarding job that there is in law enforcement in America. And I would argue the same for anyone who wants to be a police officer. If you really want to be the police, come to Minneapolis. So I love my job. It's been a challenge. The mayor is very well aware of how I feel about my job and my desire to stay here. And I'm continuing to go forward and do that 24 hours a day as best I can.
Have you had conversations with any of the new council members, and do you feel that you have the support?
So I've not had conversations with the new council members. I met Councilmember Warren came to the Special Operations Center last week and met with some of our community safety officers, but I have not had specific conversations about me personally with council members, no.
Hey Chief, Jessica Fairlevin. 2 questions, one for me and one for my colleague who wasn't able to be here. The 29 policies that got approval, have all of those been implemented and have officers been trained on those 29?
So I'll bring up Commander Wilkes to go through, she knows the list of 29 better than I am, and we'll let her address that.
Thanks, Chief. So out of the 29, we've had use of force and EIS and wellness that have been approved, and we're currently going through training for the EIS and use of force we have all been trained on. So out of the 29, we have the 2 policies that we've been trained.
And not every policy, though, requires in-person training for implementation. Right. And it's literally, I don't know if you have a number, but just the 29, we're talking about a couple hundred pages of policies that have been approved. Yeah.
So just for an example, with use of force, we have over 17 policies just in that one policy. And so with the use of force training, we've been through all of those, over 100 pages, dozens of comments, feedback went into the incorporation. And so to answer that question.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most, for use of force, what do you think is the most impactful change that you've seen?
The most impactful change? Well, I think it's more than just the changes that are a part of the settlement agreement and the consent decree. To me, the most impactful has been the focus on de-escalation and avoiding the use of force whenever possible. And that's not an easy thing to implement in a police department, because the reality is we can't talk everybody into handcuffs. And if you lean on that at an excessive point, you wind up making people less safe, right? So I think the department has done a great job at implementing critical decision-making processes, talking to people, trying to de-escalate whenever possible, and also implementing this 24 hours of scenario-based training that requires officers to also go hands-on and do practical applications of using force that are the best practices to prevent both people in the community being injured, but also our officers from getting injured as well. I think that's that, and ultimately at the end of the day, having less complaints from community about about improper force, and ultimately less injuries, both to our officers and to people in the community.
And then lastly for me, the one from my colleague, similarly to the first community question I was asked, he was wondering with an additional 2,900 federal agents being sent to Minneapolis, does MPD have a plan in place to make sure everyone is safe in case there is unrest?
So that is my biggest concern. And it's not just the reports that have been said. I don't know what the number is. Just to be clear, you said a number, I did not, because no one has told me anything officially. I've been concerned for weeks that because the issue is so emotional, and because frankly, some of the way this stuff has been carried out, the greatest risk to me is that there would be unrest or that there would be a tragedy, that somebody could get seriously hurt or killed because of what's happening. That's the most pressing issue. So we have revised our policy around immigration matters. We have put the utmost emphasis on professionalism and restraint. I have a designated supervisor that's on duty 24 hours a day. We have additional people that are on standby, in the event that there is unrest, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to be able to recall people quickly. That is a concern. So that being said, I do have an ask that's both for federal law enforcement who may not be from Minnesota coming into our community to please, whatever you do, do your jobs professionally and lawfully.
I had a question on the recruitment and the 174 recruits or the hires that you had in 2025, and I wanted to know what was behind that and yeah, basically that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So like 74 community service officers, over 3 dozen cadets, and then there's also recruits, and then there's a number of lateral transfers. I think we had the most lateral transfers ever last year. So those are people who are police officers in other cities in Minnesota that then have transferred into the police department. I think there's a number of things going on. One, I think it was helpful, of course, that the city had settled the collective bargaining agreement with the police officers union, because I know that was a big deal for a lot of the cops. But I think that's a very base level. Like that's a requirement, but that's not going to give you the results that you see. I think the results that we see have been a change since 2020, and the change is both with the officers as well as the community. I think the officers, a lot of them have started to heal. They feel proud about what they do again. A number of the officers, and many of them that are here and in this building today, might not want to tell the press, but they've told me, and their family members have told me, that living through what they lived through here and watching a majority of their coworkers leave, the destruction of the city led them to a few years of questioning what they had done with the majority of their adult life and feeling like that was not meaningful. And I think a lot of officers have started to heal, and they feel again like they're doing meaningful work. And that has an impact then on being able to recruit people. Because when I first got here, and I would ask cops in this town, what do you think we should do about recruiting? Many had told me, I tell anybody that asks me, don't come here. Everybody's leaving and everybody hates us. And if that's how we were feeling about ourselves, there's no wonder we were shrinking month after month. So I think a lot of it is the healing and people being able to see so many residents that are supportive of what the officers are doing.
Hi, Connery with KS2P. With all the national attention here in Minnesota, we know that your department has been tracking increased calls for service in the Cedar Riverside area, impacting the Somali community, with several business owners getting threats and harassment. How did your department determine what's a threat versus what would turn into action, and what message do you have to those who are getting those type of messages?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I think anyone who has a threat or feels threatened, feels harassed, should at least call 311, and we will screen the calls. What the difference, where the line is, I think, is what you're asking, is the law. What makes something illegal? So I think a lot of times, people can receive messages that are offensive and that are hurtful. Quite frankly, they're ignorant and racist. But it doesn't necessarily, unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily mean a crime has been committed. So in order for us to have a police report, and to take some sort of law enforcement action, there has to have been a law that is broken by that communication.